Yesterday, sorry for the pun, Sir Paul McCartney and Heather Mills failed to come to an agreement on their divorce settlement after that court hearing lasting several hours. Later in the evening, the former Beatle, pursued by the media, still giving nothing away. So what might have happened in that courtroom? Well, family law solicitor Ayesha Vardag joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Do you think this was a serious attempt to settle it, to come to an accord, or was it just exploratory and we were all sort of perhaps expecting a bit too much?
It seems to have been an extremely serious attempt. It's hard to say what ideas the parties went in with, but certainly the judge stayed late, worked with them, obviously, stayed way beyond the usual times, because clearly this was a case that could have been settled. It seems to be a great shame that it hasn't so far.
And the fact that it was actually held in camera as such, that it wasn't a public hearing and that no one else was allowed in, this again is an indication?
Well, no, family cases are always in camera until you go up to the Court of Appeal, because it's a very private matter. It involves families, children, people's personal lives. It's a standard part of the process. The reason this hearing is special is it's not only secret from the public, it's secret for the rest of the court process.
Yeah.
So what goes on in that hearing isn't revealed to later judges.
And would the issue be because there is a child involved here, Beatrice, and obviously there's provision has to be sorted out for her, that even though they are a public celebrity couple, that the thing has to be kept as confidential as possible for the sake of the child?
That's part of why all family hearings are private and kept confidential. But the big part of this hearing is that in order to be able to make a serious attempt at settlement, the parties have to be able to go down to their bottom line and really show how far they're willing to compromise.
So is this like a poker game almost?
Effectively, but this is where they were able to be upfront about how far they were willing to go. Obviously, if they don't settle, they don't want anybody in the future to know what their bottom line was.
Well, what happens if they can't settle in this process? What is the next step? Does it have to go then before what we term a full court hearing?
They go on to part 3. This was sort of halfway, part 2. Right. And they go on to part 3, which is a full hearing. It's still private. It's not going to be open to the public, but it's where it's finally determined by a judge, and that's when all bets are off. They'll be cross-examined on their statements. They may have to produce very long statements before that.
And this is where it could get messy.
This is where it could get messy.
And as a lawyer, is that what you go for? Do you go for the juggler in those hearings to actually, as you say, defend your client's bottom line?
Very much depends on the case. The judges don't want to hear a lot of petty, nasty stuff.
Mudslinging.
But, yes, that's right. They don't have any truck with it. Sometimes there are things you have to set out and make clear because it's important and it's part of the justice of the case. But you try to focus on the main issues, which in this case is going to be Heather Mills's needs and needs with Beatrice.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, how complex is it because of the amount of money involved? Does that actually make a difference because you're talking about such huge sums?
Sometimes it's simpler the more money there is. Sometimes it's more difficult trying to work out who's going to pay the dets and how you're going to meet everyone's needs.
And the CD collection.
That's right. When there's a lot of money, you're applying legal principles. The principles in this case are relatively simple. It's about needs. If she'd been there from the very beginning, arguably it could be even simpler. Because
it's a relatively short 4 or 5 years, so you've got to take that in terms of the measurement.
That's right. The length of the marriage is a big factor. When the money was built up is a big factor. And in this case, it was all generally generated beforehand.
So, who has got the better bottom line, if you like, at the moment? Is it the fact that Sir Paul, because he was married for a relatively short time, is on surer ground than Lady McCartney?
It's hard to say, and it's all a question of how reasonable each side is being. Arguably, for him, it's worth quite a lot to draw a line under this, to try to get some sort of confidentiality. For her, in some ways, she's got more of a battle.
Ayesha Vardag, thank you very much indeed for your expert opinion this morning. Thank you. Time for an update on the sport with Charlie.
Thank you. Sol Campbell looks set to play his first England match in just over a year after